Yo, what is up everyone? Today we are doing What If Aizen Raised Ichigo Kurosaki Part 1, obviously. And yeah, to be honest, it's been 100 days. It's probably like since the last time I ever posted anything, which is quite long. But now we shall get back into it. And without further ado, guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
It's showtime, folks.
So, we start this story from a little bit before the present timeline. So, it is the day of the Grand Fisher attack, really. What really materializes Ichigo's character in general. Now, as we know, Soul Reapers and Quincy's, they antagonize each other, and we already seen earlier in the series in the when Urio's grandfather purposely wasn't saved, or at least that's what Urio said, and then was experimented on by Mayuri, to learn any Quincy techniques. Obviously didn't really learn all of them, since most of the present day Quincy's didn't have the techniques which he watches Sternritter acquired, so they weren't really as strong, and they didn't really gain much knowledge about the Quincy and Yhwach's age. So pretty much something similar would happen in this case, being the Shinigami would, in a sense, have a way to obviously purify the hollow, but won't, because as we know, Masaki is a Quincy, so they don't like Quincy's really, and due to the 1,000-year war that happened 1,000 years ago, and the fact that Yhwach and Yamamoto had their legendary battle, and as we saw in the flashback in the 1,000-year Blood War arc, we saw he even had a painting of sort of a symbolic representation of who Yhwach was. So in this case, in a sense, we would see that that would lead them to obviously their inaction, and yeah. So once that would happen, obviously Aizen, at this point being captain of the 5th division, there's no doubt about that, he would take this chance, and having some sort of doubt that Ishin would actually train Ichigo, since he had encountered Ishin before about 11 years ago, give or take, and he obviously did not want to interfere. He had to fight Ishin, and Ishin, obviously he was his stamina was lowered, meaning he couldn't use his ultimate, move of every Shinigami being, Bankai, and that's that weakened him, to say the least, and that sort of led to the events, and he didn't want to leave it to chance, and as we know, a character like Aizen, he just wants to plan out everything perfectly, so yeah, that would lead him to obviously take Ichigo, really, and lead to raising him, really. And obviously, he can't go to Soul Society, and where would he go in the human world, the world of the living? He can't really go to hell. I mean, who goes to hell? I mean, and you gotta not really have a good personality to be going to hell. So the natural cause would be to go to Wakamundo. He built a castle there, Wakamundo, and inside Wakamundo, and he has a whole army of hollows who ascended actually above hollows and became a mix of both Shinigami and hollow, being the Arankars, as they would reach Wakamundo. And throughout the years, Ichigo would be raised, and he obviously there'd be a mixture of confusion, because he's seeing people with hollow pieces on their faces and everything like that. just doesn't look like him. And obviously at this point doesn't actually utilize any of their abilities at that point, like hollow like abilities, right? So I'd say right when he's about 14, give or take, he would be given an Asuchi, in which he would, in a sense, try to connect to his Zanpakuto, and learn more things about it and access some of his spiritual pressure, really, and try to just get stronger, really. I mean, that's all I can say in that fact. Also learning some Kido once he had sort of learned to visualize his spiritual pressure in his mind using some visualization techniques. He's obviously the lower level Kido, and those were pretty easy to knock down as long as you learn actual Reishi control. As we saw in the anime when he got that little small visualization technique from Ganju, he was able to easily control the spirit ball, right? Until he obviously became distracted and it blew up. But his Ryatsu is quite fast, and once he learned to control it, he was fine, really, to be honest. So I'd say he'd probably learn to 30 or 40s, maybe 50 or 60s if he tried and actually used the incantation, the proper one, and said it clearly and built up his Ryatsu, used the visualization technique. I mean, just really tried his best. I mean, he could try to muster some of those higher level Kidos, but at this point, well, he's quite young, and even in anime terms, he's not really doing Hado number 90 or 99, right? It's not realistic. So at this point in time, he would know if he was Spadas. Really, he didn't know much of the lower level hollows like Adhukas or Gillians, except that one at time, he went to the Menace Forest. As Tozen, he's in charge of that, and he happened to go there one time, right? So really, the fewest body he knows is, Grimmjow, Okiora, CZL, and, well, I'm not exactly sure if he knew Nell, because it didn't actually predate the time when Nell was, not in a Espada, like when she, when she was betrayed by Noriora and CZL. There wasn't actually a specific time, so I'm really not going to mention that, just in case, because this was only about 11 years before the canonical time actually took place, so it might happen before that. And obviously Harry Bell and their subordinates, the subordinates of the Espada. So he would sort of, in a sense, see, sort of copy some of their moves. Some, not really huge moves like Pesquisa and Sanita, those moves. And he always simply thought those were just Shunpo, simple things. His instinctual, right? It was all instinctual. So in this set of events, it's actually him being more instinctual, just slightly more. Not really too much of a difference, but in the end, well, there is a difference, just a small one. So we'll do about a 6 month to a year time skip, give or take, honestly, as he'd be told to go to the world of the living for the first time, as he's told to find, well, obviously the Vizards. If he wants to learn more about hollows, he has to find them and learn from them. And he was also specifically told to not tell anyone like Aurora or Hiroichi about himself or his, abilities. And other than that, he'd be fine, just to blend in like a chameleon. And, I guess put up a sort of facade, in a sense. And obviously learn as much as possible, especially if you can't learn anything from anyone from Aurora. As you know, Aizen and Aurora has always had a sort of close-on-close dynamic when it comes to their intellect, and both of them planning ahead, as Aurora was the one who, obviously narratively created the Hokuku. We don't know how he got the Hokuku. Maybe it was given to him, maybe he made it. It's not really actually shown the events that took place with that. So really at this point we're just going based on that he actually made it. But later on, maybe if Kubo writes the Hell chapter, more Hell chapters, it will go more in depth on this. Maybe from CN. But I don't know. So Ichigo gets out of a Garganta as he goes over to Urahara's shop, because at this point, one, he doesn't really have anywhere to stay, and two, he hasn't been too long to actually make currency to get a place, and, do what all humans do. So he goes to Urahara, and at first he's completely unrecognized. Think of this. Urahara doesn't know Ichigo, and obviously he knows he disappeared, but it's been 6 years, and when you see a kid grow up, it's sort of unrecognizable because they go through that maturity, and it's a clear difference. I mean, if you don't see a relative for a long time, and they only know you when you're like a baby or a toddler, you're gonna definitely notice it and even tell you that you grew up. I mean, it's the same case here. As once Ichigo, and Urahara got talking, he had set him up with a handler. He can do sort of side gigs and sort of contracts, sort of not actually killing people, not like actual a fixer, not just doing not task, but doing odd jobs. I guess you can say that's the easiest way I could describe it as. And obviously this would be with the Unagi shop, really. So the first, I'd say, month is him just sort of being in the human world and researching where the Vizards are. Now, obviously you couldn't get that out of Urahara because Urahara doesn't have a reason to send Ichigo. At first, in the canonical timeline, it was because Ichigo went to Soul Society and his mask came on, and if he loses control, I mean, he knew Ichigo for a decent bit by then, but now he actually doesn't know him at all, so there was no reason for him to tell him that. So during the night, Ichigo would utilize the stealth cloak and go through almost every district, right? And he knows the terrain by now. I mean, he's a fast learner. He knows there's obviously in the human, there's a Yakuza, there's obviously the government, which aren't really too active too much, and then there's the general population. So he's right now learning to fit in, not really fit in, more like camouflage. He's still himself. He's not really conforming to anything at this point. And now he's just really searching for, their base. So one day, he would come upon a dock where, a docking place, sort of if you played Yakuza 0, it'd be like the Tokyo Pier in Yakuza 0. And it's just just docks and containers and warehouses, things like that. Really more industrial side of Karakura town. As once he had gotten there, he was looking around, and there was a specific area where there was no Ryatsu flow at all. And this was either because there's just everyone has Ryatsu, so it's just either an anomaly or someone's there and they're using a barrier. Now, obviously the second seems more plausible. So he walks over there, and once he reaches there, he sees this warehouse. Obviously, to the normal naked eye, human naked eye to say the least, there's nothing there. But to the, the decently classed Soul Reaper, at least 3rd C, they would see the barrier, right? And Ichigo, having the cloak on, he'd be able to easily bypass it. Obviously, with his knowledge, I mean, Aizen sort of knew that the Vizards were hiding away, as during the first years that they disappeared, he was actively looking for them, because those were the first experience that successfully passed the Hollow and Shinigami who actively possessed a Hollow mask. But now, obviously after White, he obviously gave up his efforts. Didn't really make too much sense since Soul Society, obviously if they found them, they would obviously be executed, as that was the original punishment. So he would easily be able to bypass it. And as soon as he walked in, I mean, there was, say, 7-8 people with just swords on his neck. I mean, they were quite fast. And he would put up his hands in sort of a calming manner, like surrendering like manner. It's not actually surrendering, but showing he's not actually dangerous. And he would introduce himself really as he came here knowing that this was a place for Shinigami who attained hollow abilities, as they would all lower their blades as soon as he mentioned Aurora, like the reference who told him he was here. And they would all lower their guard, and that's when obviously they would start talking, and he would explain his hollow really, and that's when the training would start really. So over the next month, Ichigo would probably do the most amount of hollow hunting and hollow training he has, as in order for him to hold on to his mask as long as possible really, and or whatever mask he has, it's more of a less mature mask than he has in the around this time when he starts training with the visors. He has a more mature mask because he attained Bankai, and he has actually met his inner hollow. This point is just, well, it's nothing, it's minuscule, right? So he sort of starts training more with his Zanpakuto, being able to forge it, and obviously we can't really give him his dual wield because it just doesn't make sense. Either you would have to have him have a less mature dual wield, or just give him his original Zanpakuto, which we'll do in this case, right? It seems more reasonable, even though he did have an Asuchi, and I didn't verbatim say that we would be doing this. So, but this time, ascending to Bankai would be much easier. So I'd say with this few weeks training, and he'd be able to hold on to the mask for 20 seconds, and he did learn his Shikai, learning more Kido, though not really as much, since the purpose of it was to learn more hollow training. So after this, obviously introducing Rukia would be quite hard, since that wasn't part of the plan, but he is really hollow hunting more, so that's really bound to happen. And really, it was mostly not really too eventful. And he remembers this one time when Aizen told him about the visors. Now, the reason why he told him, I mean, this seems out of the blue. I mean, just doesn't make sense. As he told him that the visors were like the Spada. They were monsters, really, in his opinion, obviously. And they had, basically hollows inside them, pretty much. That's where they derive their power from, which is technically not wrong. But he put it in that negative connotation, which made Ichigo think that they were, really bad people. And Aizen told him at the end, when he masters hollow and Shinigami abilities from their mentoring, he could either kill them or let them be. I mean, it's his choice. It doesn't really affect him too much. Obviously, the reason why he gave him that choice is it doesn't affect his plans. I mean, Shinji doesn't have anything up his sleeve, nor does Urahara at this point. Obviously, Urahara is more worried about Shinji, not too much. So, this is where I'll be leaving part 1 of What If Ichigo Was Raised by Aizen. By the time I'll be uploading this, I'll probably have part 2 recorded already, and unfortunately there wouldn't be that availability of being able to receive feedback and then implicate it, unfortunately, but that's probably going to be the only time where I actually do this. So, yep, without further ado, guys, Have a good day. Have a good day. Have a good day.